my dating life personally was the more I'm in tune with myself, the more my life reflects who I truly am at my core. Then you don't really have to worry about the details as much in dating. Sports in college, and I was pretty popular on campus, so didn't really have struggles or issues with women. I went through a phase to where I got really into the gym, got super jacked, super shredded. I've been big, like bodybuilder or like almost like power man type big.
When you are in the state where you have not done something yet, it seems almost impossible.
The longer term benefits of fitness, I found that there's a lot of mental benefit. Luckily, I was able to identify that at a very young age.
If I cut my calories down and I work out this much,
Some days I'm just really hungry. Some days I want a pizza. Maybe if I take a more general health and nutrition approach over focusing on just getting six-pack abs.
Welcome to the Willpower Podcast.
all right, Jaren, what is the most common misconception men have when it comes to dating in your experience?
Ooh, we're getting right into it. No intro or anything. Most common misconception. I'd say there's two of them. A lot of guys think that it's a lot harder than it needs to be, but on the converse, a lot of guys think that it's a lot easier, that it should be easier. So it's a bit of a balance of both. I tell guys when they start working with us that a lot of times they're already 90% of the way there. There's just little things they need to fill in regards to the details to get them to that. You'll never be truly 100%, but to get you optimized in terms of starting to get you success and ultimately deciding what it is you want is a big one, and then getting towards whatever that goal is. On the easy side, you'll see a lot of guys, and especially guys who are newer to the space, they'll say things like, oh, well, you're a gringo who speaks Spanish and lives in Mexico, or you have a good professional job, or you're in good shape. So yeah, it must be easy. Well, it is easy once you get all of those things together, but you have to get that figured out first. And I know that as this goes on, we'll get more into the fitness and lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. But I think really it just takes a solid assessment of where you're at, where you want to go, and starting to do the things, the micro details, setting the micro goals to ultimately get you moving in that direction. Then you'll see a lot of times a big wake up call for me was in my dating life personally was the more I'm in tune with myself, the more my life reflects who I truly am at my core. Then you don't really have to worry about the details as much in dating. It's nice to have a good strategic outlook as far as, okay, what you're doing and why and where you want this thing to go. And then the tactful day to day, okay, well, she said this, then I should say this in response. But you'll find that you sort of transcend that after a while when you're just in touch with who you are, doing what it is you want to do. And then girls just start kind of popping up at that point.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of dating is just getting out of your own way. Like we all have these
It
stories
is.
and things that
Yeah.
insecurities, all those things. And it's just like, how can I just get out of my own way and be myself? And that tends to actually work.
Every single guy has those, and it's different for every person. So I used to be quite a bit obese when I was a kid. So for the longest time, I still carried those internal scripts or self-talk to where, well, I'm fat, ergo I'm unlovable. We'll have clients come in, I'm from such and such country, or I'm of such and such background or race or heritage or ethnicity or socioeconomic class or income level, ergo I am unworthy of having success with women. Which, if you expand that logically a bit further, it ultimately comes back to I am unlovable. So, whatever the excuses are, you'll see on a lot of dating channels. I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages. There is a foreign factor in most countries, but you still have to know what to do in the dating realm. Yeah, if you make more money, it might be a little bit easier. But I've worked with plenty of guys that make way more money than I do, and they have zero skills with women, and that is a disaster waiting to happen. Let's just say that.
Yep. Yeah, we can talk about this more, but one of the
Mhm.
things I know for sure with guys, like I've definitely had this idea in my head is like you get fit and then you expect, okay, now I'm gonna just have
Yep.
girls like fawning over me. But that's just like an advantage that just helps you a little bit, but that's a totally avoiding the actual issue.
Some of those guys actually have it more difficult than guys that maybe aren't as solid in the looks department. I went through that stage too. I lost a bunch of weight, played sports in college, and I was pretty popular on campus, so didn't really have struggles or issues with women. It wasn't until I started getting well into my career that I thought, okay, well, why isn't this as easy as it used to be? That was purely situational before. Being kind of a big man on university campus really helps out there. Whereas when you're in your day-to-day mid 20s, late 20s, just average adult life, you're like, oh, okay, I need to actually figure out how this works. But I went through a phase to where I got really into the gym, got super jacked, super shredded. I've been big, like bodybuilder or like almost like power man type big, to lean and fit, like more like fitness model. And my day-to-day walking around weight, I like to be somewhere in the middle, a nice happy compromise. But when I first got just etched out six-pack abs years ago, I remember walking around and I fell into that mindset too of just girls should just be throwing themselves at me. Again, contextually, I went to Coachella shortly thereafter when I got my first six-pack years ago, and they were essentially throwing themselves at me, but I still hadn't developed the skill set to know what to do with that or how to move things forward. So it definitely helps. I'd say it is an attractiveness multiplier, a force multiplier, being physically fit, but you should really do it for yourself at the end of the day. However, it's one of many things. Essentially, and we'll probably get into this more, you want to be the whole package.
Are there any unexpected benefits from fitness that relate to dating beyond just like, okay, I look good and girls like how I look?
Yeah, in fact, I'd say most of the longer term benefits have nothing to do with dating or physical attractiveness. If we're being honest, a lot of guys get into it for that reason. So I always thought if I look hot, I will get girls. And yes, you will for the short term. Again, you have to nurture some of those more softer connection building type characteristics if you want a relationship to essentially come out of it and go the distance. But the longer term benefits of fitness, I found that there's a lot of mental benefits. So I'm a millennial. I come from the generation, oh, just take a pill to solve everything. Couldn't sit still in class. Anytime the teacher asked a question, hand would fling in the air. Spent most of my public school experience, K through 12, in the hallway copying dictionary passages. I used to love getting in school suspension on purpose so I could actually sit down and really study. I was a bit ahead in school, and a lot of my peers academically were remedial by comparison. So I'd intentionally get kicked out of class just so I can go to the library, grab a book, and just read all day. And having that kind of mental hardwiring, I again come from the generation of, well, let's give them a pill. Let's Adderall or Ritalin, and then Adderall, and then Prozac, and then Zyprexa, and then Effexor XR. And I know in the US, there's this almost religion behind psychiatry or taking some sort of medication. I found when I started getting really fit, and it wasn't even a primary objective of mine, that a lot of that stuff just went away. I started calming down. I started feeling more tranquil. The racing thoughts stopped occurring. I can focus a lot more. My attention and mental clarity is just much more acute. And again, that wasn't a reason, being honest. I'm going to get jacked so I can get girls. But afterwards, like, okay, I just all around, I operate much more efficiently from a mental clarity, focus type standpoint. And then sleep is a big one too. Sleep is difficult when you're a little wired, so to speak, but when you just beat the hell out of yourself in the gym, it's not very hard to fall asleep either.
Mm, that's very true. There's nothing like being just exhausted and sleeping like a baby.
Oh yeah.
What are some like the biggest personal challenges you've had to overcome, either in fitness or dating? We can go into all of it.
Fitness, yeah, I knocked that out pretty early. A lot of that did stem from dating. So again, I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. So even back then, there's the initial buddings of this body positivity movement. So they say things like, you're not fat, you're big boned, or you have to grow out before you grow up. And then before I knew it, I was 16, 17. It was about the time where my buddies were starting to have girlfriends and starting to get intimate with girls and going to the school dances like your homecomings and proms. So it was about that time where I realized, hey, you know what? I'd like a prom date. I'd like to have an actual girlfriend. I'd like to have these types of relationships with women, and ultimately taking a big hard look in the mirror that this obesity or this layer of adipose tissue, it's really getting in the way. And then if you look into people that are obese, a lot of times with females, this happens where they'll say that, okay, well, you're essentially creating a physical barrier so no one can get close to you. Luckily, I was able to identify that at a very young age, overcome that. I kind of went at it blind. We didn't have the internet or social media or now AI to tell you exactly what to do. But you kind of know. It's like, okay, I got to cut out the fried food. No more sugar. If it doesn't grow on the ground, don't eat it. Shop to the perimeter of the grocery store. Started down that path, and then as I got more experience, then it's adjusting your macronutrition nutrition splits and doing crazy things like intermittent fasting or cyclical keto or yeah, cyclical keto type dieting. So that I'd say that was difficult at first just to get going. But once you start getting progress, I was also dedicated. I was determined, like, I am not going to be fat anymore. I had changed my identity already. A lot of guys don't go through that process. They find themselves in a constant uphill battle or they do the yo-yo dieting. For me, I had a very firm vision of who I was going to be, what I was going to look like, and how I was going to show up in the world. So in the initial phases, there's that bit of a disconnect. Like I've mentally upgraded my image, but I look in the mirror and reality doesn't reflect that back to me. So that's a bit difficult. But from a motivational standpoint, I never really had any issues there. I think it was more so just to keep going. Again, I was really pumped. I knew that I was going to hit my goal, and that was actually kind of like I was saying earlier. You think it's a lot more difficult at first, but it's actually a lot easier because, especially when you're significantly overweight, you lose weight very quickly. Like obese people, they just step out of bed and then not eat a box of pizza or a bag of chips in a day, and they'll lose like 2 or 3 pounds because they have so much mass they're carrying around. What's harder is when you get really dialed in. Going from 12% body fat to 10% body fat is much more difficult than going from 38% body fat to 30% body fat, which I tell a lot of my guys, like, hey, man, I've lost 8% body fat. I'm like, congratulations, keep going, but you're still fat. So I'd say one of the more difficult things is as you level up, you have to continually upgrade your goals. Before I thought for the longest time, 18 to 21% body fat was nice and lean. And then that was 13 to 15%. And then I walk around 10 to 12%. Maybe once or twice a year for a photo shoot or a beach wedding, I'll get down into single digits. But you have to constantly upgrade your goal set and then throw in new considerations as you go further and further into whatever it is you're trying to do.
What do you think it is that keeps you dialed at that point where like you can almost just decide I'm gonna go down to 9% now, or I'm good at 10 to 12.
The first thing, I remember when I first went down to single digits, I used to tell myself it wasn't possible. I used to always have this running recurring script in the back of my head that I'm a big guy, I'm a mass monster, I'm formerly obese. My systems or my hormonal system, my endocrine system, my genetics, they aren't optimized for me to get to that point. It's just not for me. And then in saying these things, I realized that the missing piece of the puzzle was, oh, okay, well, these certain things aren't optimized. Maybe if I optimize my hormones, maybe if I optimize my diet, maybe if I take a more general health and nutrition approach over focusing on just getting six pack abs, let's try that out. And at this point, I'd already tracked everything. I already knew how to diet. I knew how to bulk. I knew how to cut. And it was really just, okay, taking it a step further. But in doing so, going from I was probably closer to 15%, but when I made the decision, I'm going down to single digits, really upgrading my belief system, telling myself like, yeah, you can do it. And then when you get there for a while, you can either do it on the front end or the back end. In this case, I saw myself again in the mirror of what I wanted to look like, I did like my celebrity avatar and I calculated everything on spreadsheets. I knew it was possible based on previous diet logs that I had done. I just had to take it a step further. A couple of new considerations. So cut out dairy, no sugar at all. Cheat days, going to cheat meals, and then cheat meals actually really aren't that dirty. It's just more of a carb reload, but clean carb sources. So the more you get dialed in, there are more considerations. But really, it was just leading myself to believe that I can do it. And then once I did do it, going back kind of post-mortem or after the fact and upgrading the mindset to this is who I am now. And it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for me to be, for me now, over 15% body fat. Whereas years ago, 15% body fat, like, oh, well, I'm jacked. But now 15% to me in my brain is fat.
Yeah, it's funny. I think this, again, will tie back into dating, but this thing about beliefs and like when you are in the state where you have not done something yet, it seems almost impossible. Even if you see other people do it, like, okay, if I cut my calories down and I work out this much, like I must lose weight. But a part of you doesn't know that and it doesn't believe it yet. And so there is a superpower to having done it and then being able to go back and forth. It's a lot easier, I know, because you've done it and your body knows like emotionally that this is possible.
Yeah, and you become accustomed to it. You know those switches. So one thing I used to do early in the day is I relied a lot on stimulants or supplements or stuff like that. And then as I got further into it, again, my mindset now is more so I say age gracefully. So I don't want to stress out my body before. I've done a lot of crazy diets, crazy supplementation to where, yeah, you're getting the results, but you're kind of burning yourself out too. So now I go more of a gradual type approach. Again, overall general nutrition, but I've already gone through the process of suffering during a really crazy cut. I've already gone the sleepless nights when I took maybe too much supplementation on the energizing side, like your caffeines or your whatever. I can't remember what they are because I don't take any of that stuff anymore. But you've gone through the uncomfortable phases to where mentally, when you do it again, it's not like the first time. Anytime you do anything the first time, it's like, whoa, it's this novel experience and it's earth shattering and groundbreaking. For me, we are talking in the pre-call about extended fasts. Well, I do at least a handful of extended fasts, 3 days or so per year, to where it's nothing really groundbreaking. Like, okay, yeah, day one, this is how I'm going to feel. Night two is usually where I get the most hunger pains. If I can manage to occupy my mind and get through it. Day three is usually a breeze. I get like super crazy focus. I do a lot of writing, kind of spiritual stuff starts happening. It's not surprising to me anymore. So you're just going through it like, oh, yep, this is what this is like. And then you're always focused on the whatever the objective is, whatever the outcome is. In the case of the 3-day fast, for me, a lot of times it's just a dopamine reset, or it's a spiritual cleanse, or if I've been it's to kickstart healthy habits. If I let myself go during holiday or Christmas or something like that, I find myself I'm drinking and smoking and eating junk food, and I've strung a bunch of those days together. It's like, all right, I just need it's literally like hitting a reset switch. Okay, 3-day fast. That's what we're doing. And I think if you have that outcome in mind, that objective planted firmly, and again, I do this daily. A lot of people think I like going to the gym. I don't actually like working out anymore. I've done it every day, almost every day for 20 years. It's kind of lost its allure, but I like walking home from the gym when you feel really good and the wind's blowing and the birds are chirping and the sights and the smells and the sounds are all around you. They'll walk home from the gym, and I just got a car here recently. I still walk to and from the gym because that's what I'm looking for. So if I feel like I'm gassing out during a certain rep set, or I started thinking Spanish, series, in a certain in a certain set, then okay, I'm just focusing on that nice walk home and then the shower afterwards, and then I'm done for the day. And then afterwards, the mental clarity that allows me to get through the rest of my workday. That's what I look for. So in the moment, I guess you can say kind of embrace the suck is a term that used to go around. I'm always looking into the future, but you want to be in the moment too. So maybe run those two things concurrently or in parallel in your head.
Yeah, being aware of what comes next. Because I can imagine your first time, just with the fasting example, your first time going through it, you almost don't know that, like, okay, day three is going to get a little easier. So you're in the midst of feeling a bunch of hunger, and there's no promise of like, okay, this is going to
Or
end. This isn't going to just last forever.
And new things will come up. Like the first extended fast, you realize, oh, it's been like 42 or 48 hours or whatever it is. It's like my breath feels weird. And like, oh, I think I kicked myself into ketosis. Like
Hmm.
that wasn't a consideration I took into do my first fast, but or extended fast, if I don't eat for 3 days, there's a good chance I'll go into keto. And now I'll do like a glycogen depletion workout sometimes before a fast, or well, I've done it both ways. I've done a depletion workout and then a carb reload prior to the fast. But then I find that your body doesn't like peaks and valleys. It likes kind of close to homeostasis. So now I find that I ease myself into a fast and then ease myself out of it.
Yeah, that's a big one, is not going crazy afterward.
Yeah.
It's hard. Do you have a favorite diet that you've done over the years? Like any of like what you've said is basically you're just like a clean eating now, but were there any like fad diets that you went through that you particularly liked?
I've been through all of them. I've done the 5 to 6 small meals a day for a bulk. I've done dirty bulks and clean bulks. I'd call it a dirty cut. If you're using things like ephedrine HCl for a dirty cut, and then you realize, okay, well, I can just clean up my diet and I don't have to use all these crazy supplements that have my heart beating out of my chest. I've done clean cuts. I've done crash cuts. I've done gradual cuts. Now I just try to keep it within a basic operating range. So I used to bulk, maybe put on 30 pounds. Usually half of that was fat, half of it was muscle. I'd lose the fat and then maybe lose 3, 4, 5 pounds of muscle. So like a net lean muscle gain of like 10 pounds a year in my early days. Now during the year, I don't cut as hard and I don't bulk as hard. So maybe I'll lose a pound or two or three of lean muscle mass over the summertime. But during the holidays, I loosen up the diet a bit, but I don't go 30 pounds up. I'll go 5 to 10 pounds up. And then tomorrow's a EDC here in Mexico. So for me, it's like, okay, the first week of January to the mid to last week of February, I have to cut. But if I'm only 6 pounds up, that's only a pound a week of a cut. That's pretty gradual. It's not too intensive. So I tried to keep things within a narrower range, I'd
Mm.
say is a big trick. And then I focus on the day to day a lot, how I feel. Some days I'm just really hungry. Some days I want a pizza, but I've tracked everything so much over the years that good example is last night, out of nowhere, a box of homemade sweets and cookies and shit showed up at my house that my family sent for Valentine's Day. You know, it took a little longer to get down to Mexico. As I'm tightening up for EDC, and then I found myself, I think I had like 3 or 4 cookies last night. I'm like, oh no, sugar cookies, nothing crazy, probably 100, 200 calories a piece. I'm like, oh no, this is going to screw me up. Actually weighed in at the gym today and I lost a bit of weight. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've been dieting down so hard that sometimes your body needs that metabolic boost real quick. And then again, in terms of muscle fullness, I filled out a little bit. So I had a more intensive workout, didn't feel as gassed, wasn't falling short in the higher rep schemes. So that worked out really well for me. But again, that's stuff that I've done time and time again in the past to where I don't have to pull open the spreadsheets anymore and log everything day by day. My body follows kind of a cyclical nature. So for me, I'd say there's a lot of little tools I do on my day-to-day diet. OMAD, 1 meal a day, intermittent fasting. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now. That's a game changer. So I call it feed the former fat kid or feed the fat kid. So at night, I get to eat a lot and I become physically full to the point where I can't eat anymore. So even if I want to do cookies, there's a box of probably like 200 cookies here. It's gonna be a giant box. After 3 or 4 cookies, okay, yeah, I scratched that itch, but like I'm stuffed from eating the clean stuff first. So that works really well for me. Cyclical carb loading or deloading or whatever, that works really well for me too. So usually I'll do carb heavy on Sunday leading into the workout week. Wednesday night, that actually coincided nicely, this box showing up with all these sweets because Thursday is my leg day. So Wednesday night, I'll go a little higher on the carbs. And then the rest of the time, just keep it maintenance. If I ever come in too hard on the weekend, let's say there's like a Chinese buffet and I eat too much, then you can always go back to fasting. Or I build in what's called a fat flush day too. So maybe I don't want to do a full day fast, but I'll do just protein. So a pound or two of shrimp with like some cocktail sauce. That's all I'm eating for the day. Or even sometimes just, whey protein isolate. I like to get nutrition from external food sources, but if I need to, if I'm in a bind, if I'm traveling to the other side of the world or something, yeah, just throw it all back, liquid whey, minimal calories, maximum protein, and then it's really just kind of balancing yourself out. The way I look at it, if you remember back in the day when you have to balance a checkbook, you're really just keeping a running ledger. So, oh no, I was 2,000 calories up today. I really overdid it. I have to pay myself back this 2,000 calories. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe I do fast a full day, and that's whatever my TDE is, total daily expenditure of energy. Mine fluctuates between 3,000, 300, sometimes 3,500 a day. It just depends on what mathematical equation I want to do or how I feel. Again, I don't do drastic stuff like I used to. It's more so, okay, I have to pay 10,000 calories back into the bank over the course of the next 3 weeks. Well, that's pretty doable.
It's so interesting how your body is like a running tally of your total
It
calories
does,
in and
yeah.
out over your entire life. Like up to this point, that's what your body is.
I always tell people that when they're like, "Oh, I want to lose 10 pounds in 90 days," and they think in terms, and it's a good starting point. Okay, 300 or 500 to 800 caloric deficit daily. But I think in terms of you have 90 days to cut out 35,000 calories,
Mhm.
3,500 calories, roughly a pound or so. So think of it in those terms. Like you can bite them, you can etch it out in big chunks. You can nibble along the way. You can have some enjoyment days followed by days where you don't. Like you can really do whatever you want. But if your goal is to lose 10 pounds of body fat in the next 90 days, you owe the bank 35,000 calories. So how do you want to divvy that up? And it's a lot easier to do that because then things come up where it's enjoyable. It's like, oh no, sorry guys, I can't go out and get sushi with you because I'm in this cut. Well, no, you just need to know where you are, and if you overdraft on that day, then you need to pay it back the next day or the next week or whenever. But in that 90-day period or whatever your allotted goal attainment time is, what do you owe the caloric bank or what do you need to withdraw from it?
Okay, let's shift over to dating. So what has been like
Alrighty.
personal challenges for you? You talked about having success in college and then moving out and
Mhm.
almost like losing your identity in dating, it feels like. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, losing your identity in dating, which really think of dating in terms of it's just a reflection of you. So whenever you hear guys say, "Oh, I get these really out of shape girls," or "Oh, I get gold diggers," like, okay, well, that's what you're putting out there. Because I used to tell the world this too. I used to say, "Oh, I can't get the fun, fit, chill type who's into music and likes to travel and has a good education and speaks multiple languages." Well, okay, that's because I couldn't do that stuff. But once I started showing up in the world, putting that out there, then the girls that I used to detest, and that's all I could get. And at no point in my dating career have I dated like bad girls or gross girls or anything. But you mentally start leveling up, and you realize as you level up, the dating market just kind of responds to you accordingly there. But I do like the idea of the identity in dating. So going back to the overweight days. That was my identity in dating. That was my identity of who I was because the physical definitely matched that. That's why, again, I'm not a huge fan of the body positivity thing. Like, yeah, don't hate yourself. I'm about as tall as I am, or I'm about as wide as I am tall. Not going to change that. I'm not going to be a 6'7", whatever you need to be basketball player. Just not good at that sport. Don't have a lot of coordination. I'm never going to be a figure skater. It's not going to happen. But I was pretty good at football, man. I was pretty good in baseball. I was a catcher, and I have the build for it. So just find what works for you. But I think coming out, you mentioned, and a lot of the guys this happens to, they have some success in dating. So they're the hometown hero. I use the analogy of a good buddy of mine growing up, captain of the football team, prom king, ASB president, president of his frat going into college, and then gets out, plopped into the world just like the rest of us, and then no one knows who he is. Okay, yeah, I was King D back in college, but now you're junior level associate for a major international corporation and you're in the corporate rut just like the rest of us. That doesn't really work anymore in dating. So, and in doing so, for me in my career, it took me a while to start kind of finding my career identity too. I'd move in every which direction. Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Whereas now, as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, that just doesn't interest me. Like, I don't want to do that kind of project. Or like, okay, the money might be great, but the founding partner of this venture is a pain in the ass. So I don't want to work with people like that. So I think that's one of the biggest upgrades in any area of life is being able to say no more than you say yes. When you start getting good at dating, and it all goes hand in hand. So you get your fitness dialed in, and then you feel more confident in your career, and people do treat you better when you look better. That goes. I've been on both sides of that coin. It is night and day the difference between how people treat you when you just present yourself physically in a certain way. Well, that spills into your career, and then that career success spills into your dating. So you want to make sure you're kind of keeping that balance moving forward. But for me, I think where I've gotten lately, and this is what I tell a lot of guys when they start off with us is I'm just going to download the tools and all the instruments and share some lessons with you to get you to where I got in a streamlined fashion rather than having to wait 10, 15, even 20 years to get to this point. But there's always struggles. You always level up. So the current struggle I have now is that the girls I've always wanted, I can have whenever I want. Okay, I can't walk down the street and say that's that exact girl if she's married or whatever. Maybe she's leaving town right now. She's on the way to the airport. Okay, probably not going to happen. But the exact type of girl I want, I can have whenever I want. And I've been that way for years now. And now it gets to the point where like, okay, I'm focusing on other things, the business and my career and other little side projects. And I want to travel more and I want to see my family more. So I don't have a lot of hours left in the day. And it's weird that again, it wasn't a primary objective. And you'll hear things like, okay, be mysterious and be unavailable and, have make her wait to get your time and attention. I didn't make that decision consciously. It's just other things that interest me in life started pulling me in that direction. And in doing so, it's a crazy multiplier to where girls hit you up all the time. Like, hey, I miss you. Or what are you up to? Oh, did you forget about me? Oh, I want to see you. And a lot of things that girls say to you, it's funny. It all comes full circle or things that I used to say to girls back when I was fat, like, oh, I guess you don't want to talk to me. Or, oh, I thought you wouldn't like me. I had a girl the other day tell me like, "Oh, hey, I didn't think you'd like me." I was like, "Why? Like, why? That's hilarious. Why would you think I wouldn't like you? Like, we're seeing each other, and then she does most of the pursuing. Again, because I'm just really busy. But it's like if you send a text, I'm going to respond, and if you say you want to hang out, I'll find some time in the calendar and we'll hang out. So why would you think I wouldn't like you? So again, it's really funny just seeing how it kind of comes back around full circle to where you're not the pursuer anymore, you're the one being pursued, which is a nice place to be, but it does become difficult. Same thing in finances or fitness, where you start to get into an area of mastery to where, okay, well, what is it do I want now? It's like I can do anything I want. What do I want? And then the whole cycle starts over again. It's like, okay, you got to go back into yourself. Here's who I am. Here's where I want to go. What's my new identity look like? What are the things I need to do to head in that direction to eventually get there? What's the time frame for it? So it's just a constant reiteration and cycle that repeats itself over and over. But as you get successful in anything in life, one thing I always tell guys is your problems become better. So back in the day, it was okay, I can't get a prom date to where now, if there's an adult equivalent to prom, what music festival this weekend? I always buy extra tickets. Who am I taking to the music festival? Turns out it's usually just my main girl or my top girl or whoever I had the best relationship at that time. And for me, but there's multiple options. There's multiple girls who have asked to go with me, but I'll take the girl who's the most chill, that can hang for 3 days straight, that's going to dance with me, that's not going to ditch me, that's not going to get lost, that's not going to cause issues, like just the best company I can have for 3 days. And that's a good place to be in, where you have so many options that it can be difficult at times, but eventually the best quality she just kind of ends up being a part of your life.
Do you know what that is? Like that next thing that you're looking for? Because you said once you get to this point of beating that part of the game, now what
Yep.
is it that you want now?
I think for me, the next level, and I don't know if I necessarily want this or not, it would be something long term, more permanent, settle down, have kids. But the problem for me is my life is so interesting that there's new little side quests and challenges that come up. And I don't necessarily have a timeline for that. So I'm always getting interested in new little projects or wanting to upgrade belief systems or proficiency in other professional or personal areas of my life to where again, I focus on those things, and I just find as a byproduct, the women upgrade naturally too.
Okay, so you have kind of an idea, but it's not like a
General
has
direction,
to
yeah.
happen now.
Well, with the dating thing, it's one where going back to being overweight, it was an area of so much loneliness and pain in my life to where I had to satisfy that need. I had to get it down. Now I feel like I mastered that area, that vertical in my life years ago to where I don't really have to think much more about it. And in doing so, that's nice because it doesn't occupy the mental real estate anymore. I can put that aside and then other things come up and it's like, oh, you know what? When I was a kid, I was really interested in music. I never leaned into that. So now I'm carving out times of my day to do something musically, whether it's practicing or figuring out new riffs on guitar or composing, or I have vocal lessons twice a week. That's an area of my life that I never put any focus on. And when I do so, it just kind of lights me up at my core. So that's something I'm going to lean more into. Not a detriment to the dating life. In fact, the girl I mentioned earlier, we're going to meet up later tonight. And for most of my dates, it's like, hey, Monday through Friday, my schedule is pretty set. So at this time, I'm going to play guitar and sing for an hour. At this time, I'm going to cook dinner. At this time, I'm going to eat. At this time, I'm going to bed. And if you want to be a part of that, and the funny thing is, most girls are like, oh my God, yeah, that sounds awesome. Like, okay, cool. You're just bringing them into your life. But dating hasn't been a focus for me in such a long time that I keep uncovering, activating new parts of my personality and of myself that when you like, oh wow, I've really liked this topic, let's lean into it, and baha, it just makes you stronger and brighter and more insightful and just kind of lights you up at your core spiritually. Then once more the world just kind of reciprocates, and then these girls that are operating at that same frequency just show up and like, oh hey, I'm here, pick me. You're like, oh hey sweetie, that's sweet, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, it's like having a good life makes you attractive. It's kind of
Yeah, weird,
because
huh?
you're that's the offer almost is like you're sharing part of your life with someone. Even if it's just like a small amount, that's still what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And a point on that too, with the identity thing, especially guys that watch dating type content. And I went through this phase too, to where, well, I need the girl with the big Botox lips and the huge fake tits and the giant bubble butt and the high class lifestyle. I need to be able to, money, muscles, game frame, which that's good. You should always work on all of these things. But for me, I got to the point where I could date these girls. And a lot of times, like I couldn't keep them because I'm not into that lifestyle. Like I don't really like five-star dining. I like cooking at home. I this last weekend we did like a five-star blind tasting experience, like little teeny tiny portions, and it's interesting. Like, oh, I like these infusions. I'll work these into my recipes, but like that's just not my vibe. Or oh, well, let's go to a classy wine lounge. I'm not a big wine guy. The high class lifestyle and the ritz and the glam of all that. I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty happy at home with the decent apartment. I've got a good view out here. And then I just bought a car the other day. Not a car in Mexico. It's big. A car from this year. Bought an older BMW, runs well, single owner, got meticulous maintenance and got it fully inspected. And I took it out for a cruise before I got on here. Like, I don't have to break the bank, but that scratches that itch. But I realized in being able to attract those kinds of girls, like, okay, well, they're kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know if I necessarily want those kinds of girls. And then once I got to that point, like, I'm not interested in those types of girls. Now those types of girls, you'll see them on Instagram. They'll be showing off that lifestyle, but like there's a period where I became their booty call. It's like, oh, you don't want to take me to this 5-star restaurant? Like, no, that sounds terrible. That's stupid. I don't like, I'm just not interested. Oh, well, you got to wine and dine me. You got to take me out. I was like, 7 o'clock, I play guitar for an hour. 8 o'clock, I cook dinner. 9 o'clock, I eat. 10 o'clock, we can have fun. I'm usually in bed by 10. Like, that's the schedule. That's the structure. That's the plan. If you want to be a part of it, great. If not, I am not interested in your Instagram status. I'm not interested in going to nightclubs till 4, 5, 6 in the morning when I'm up at about that time in the morning. Just not going to work, sweetie. Once more, it goes full circle. You find yourself saying things to even the hottest girls that you always dreamed about when you were a kid. You realize, I don't really want that. And then you find yourself saying things to them that they would have said to you in the past, like, we're not compatible. I don't think there's chemistry. I don't see this going anywhere. And then you're like, okay, I got it.
Get to hear back.
Yeah.
Are there any habits or mindsets that you have not overcome that you're still working on?
One that I'm working on now, it's funny that I watched, it was like a Hindu guru or something months ago, and he said something about you make a declaration to the world like, I am ready for this, and then it'll throw you bits of failure to really test your resolve or will to see if you are. So financially, I've always done well financially compared to my peers, but that's judging myself more in the corporate world. So I rose through my career very quickly, do very well, hit my first 6 figures by the time late 20s or 30s. That was a big milestone for me too. Like, oh my God, 6 figures, that's so much. And now if someone gets on the phone for a project, like if it's not in the 6 figures, it's not even the starting point. We're just not having a conversation. So once we're upgrading that belief system, but starting to get to the point to where I'm thinking in bigger terms and renegotiating my relationship with money. Again, I mentioned just right here a second ago that I'm pretty happy with very little. I don't need a lot. I'm very in tune with my senses and the environment, and I'm very curious. I like to study and I like to do a lot of introverted stuff. And even if I had access to the finest things in life, I just don't feel like I really need it. But in doing so, I put that out to the universe, and I was making just enough to get by. Getting into the higher strata, okay, I want to make more money, not because I have higher tastes by any means, but I want to start doing stuff. It scratches that curiosity part of my brain. I want to be able to go down more of this avenue. I want to create opportunities for other people. So now that I put together that goal set, completely unrelated to dating, completely unrelated to fitness, more just who I am and the legacy I want to leave in the world, then I find that, okay, well, your money mindset starts to shift a bit. And then I spent the last fiscal quarter, or the last quarter of last calendar year, ironing everything out. Like, here's a financial plan. Here's the money with the money I had at the time coming in. Here's how I'm going to allocate it. Here's where it's going to go out. It'll put me here in this amount of time. Very structured goal sets. And then at the beginning of the year, I mentioned the pre-call, a couple of my biggest deals fell through. I'm like, okay, well, that sucks. But I am living the consequences of a previous time to where I was in like, oh, this sucks. And I find that my lows today are way higher than my wildest imagination of my highs, even in years past, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So it's one of those things to where, okay, put out to the universe, like, here's who I am, here's how I'm going to show up, here's the goal. And then like, okay, yeah, really funny. We see you, Jaren. Now we're going to pull these contracts away from you. And like, oh, universe. Well, I have a multi-tiered kind of buffer system to where I can go a year and a half without having any interruption to my lifestyle. And then in doing so, I'm looking around, okay, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep doing the same types of projects I was doing before? I can take a 30-day introspection period and then start looking around, okay, what's on the market? What's out there? What do I want to focus on the dating business? Do I want to focus more on music? Do I want to focus here? What do I want to do? And then start kind of resetting the table for my next big goal set. But the consequence of me not worrying about it is a result of me having had to worry about it in the past. So I think it's money making and building wealth, but I'm definitely not in a place of lack for anyone out there that may lack the clarity there. It's
Hmm.
again, it's just updating, getting to the next level.
Right. Okay, let's imagine you have there's a guy and he's fat and
Mhm.
he wants to work on his dating, but he also has like zero confidence in his body. What would be your step-by-step game plan for this type of client?
Oh, I get a lot of those guys on our complimentary discovery calls to where, hey man, I want to get out there and get dating. And the funny thing is, a lot of them do get girls. They just don't get the best quality girls, and their relationships are terrible because I hate to break it to you guys, if you're out there in this position, I've been there before. If she's not physically attracted to you, you're not going to get her best. And once more, I've been on both sides of that coin. One is clearly better than the other. You want her to, you kind of want to be everything for her to be like, wow, this I'm excited to be with this guy, but I also feel at peace with him and I feel tranquil and he has a clear sense of direction of who he is, how he shows up in the world and where he's going. And if you're coming into the dating game and you're considerably overweight, then at an inner level, you're lacking a lot of this stuff. I say time and time again, not a huge fan of body positivity. Naturally, you can't change your race, you can't change your stature, you can't change your overall build, but you sure as shit can optimize it. So really give yourself the love and respect needed to get the best out of yourself physically, and that will help your dating game. So a lot of guys that come on board in this situation, most of them, I tell them, like, we're not even going to worry about dating. You're not in a position to be dating. Let's say you have 6 months of solid fat loss to go. Well, the type of girl you can attract now is not going to be the same girl you attract 6 months from now. And I've done that in periods of my life where I've had longer term relationships, and a lot of times the worst breakups, they're not the cheating or the infidelity or the lying or the manipulation. A lot of the worst breakups were like, hey, this is a really good relationship, but I've outgrown you. You met me 2 or 3 years ago when I was happy in the state I was, or I was striving to get to the state I am now. And in this state, I'm looking 2 or 3 years in the future, and you haven't grown, and we're just kind of growing apart. I'm a big fan of language too. Like we're literally growing apart. So for the guys that are considerably overweight, I say like really, you got to figure out how your body works. You have to figure out how yourself works. There is some deeper psychology to unpack there too. Why have you allowed yourself to get to this point? Chemically, your brain's kind of off. When I eat really shitty for a few weeks, my brain chemistry starts to shift. My sleeping patterns interrupted. I have ups and downs of energy levels throughout the day. I don't have that clear, concise focus energy I do when I'm dialed in with the diet and nutrition. So you have to really start to unpack all of that stuff. In the meantime, guys that get into our programs, I have done courses before. So let's say you're on a 12-week fitness transformation, then guess what? I also have a 12-week course. And then so you can start to download some of the academic stuff, but I really hate to throw guys out on the dating market when they're not primed for success, because that'll only reinforce some of those limiting self-beliefs, that negative self-talk. Like, I'm fat, I don't deserve to be loved. And then you go out to the dating market and you approach your version of a 10 and we don't want to do that. That's not going to help you. So in that case, I take more of a tiered approach. And I've worked with plenty of guys that are consistently overweight. They'll be 30 pounds down, 40 pounds down, and they'll start to feel pretty good about themselves. Like, hey man, I want to buy new clothes. Like, you know what? Go buy new clothes for your absolute target weight, and then you're gonna work yourself into that. Throw away your old clothes. You have to, like, I'm in Mexico, so the Spanish conquistadors burn the ships. There is no going back. This is not you. You're literally killing a part of yourself that doesn't exist anymore, and you're allowing the new and improved version, the inner you, to start to blossom. And in doing so, you have to unpack the physical weight. If you're carrying physical weight, it's because you're carrying emotional weight, and you need to get to the bottom of that. One thing too that's big in dating, this was a game changer for me. Girls can feel your energy. I used to not really be emotionally intelligent. You'll hear like EQ versus IQ. I didn't understand what emotions were, and I literally had insulation physically to where I couldn't feel emotions. As I got leaner, you start to be able to feel stuff in your environment. When I'm really lean, I get cold faster. I get warm faster. You're more in tune with the elements because you don't have that interference from the adipose tissue, so to speak. So all of this stuff, I know it's a mouthful. I can get going. All of it's interrelated, but if you're literally carrying weight around, don't bring weight into your relationships, whether it's physical or more kind of intangible.
So there's a connection for sure between emotions and just holding a lot of body fat. I know that for sure. Do you know what that is? Like where that really comes from?
There's different areas to tackle it. So I've had guys, and they don't know any better. They'll tell me things like they're 100 pounds overweight, and they'll say, "Well, my testosterone's really high," or "Oh, my hormonal profile is really good." No, it's not. I can look at your body and tell you it's not because when my hormones are dialed in, everything is nice and lean, and there's striations, and everything just works. And even when the pandemic was going around, yeah, I got it, but I didn't get sick, because I was dialed in. So you'll hear people, and it's not their fault. They don't know any better. They've been misled by the powers that be, or a lot of times where the content we consume. So you have to kind of get rid of those negative influences or sources of information in your life. But a lot of it's biological. It's metabolic. You do have metabolic syndrome if you are overweight. You likely have insulin sensitivity issues. So your body is not efficient at processing insulin, especially if you're consistently overeating a lot of sugar and carbs and stuff like that. You're getting into like pre-diabetes territory. So now you have medical issues. And of course, that dips into the emotional issues. Turns out when your body is breaking down, you kind of feel like crap at the end of the day. Turns out when you feel really, really good about yourself, it's a lot easier to go to the gym. It's a lot easier to say no to putting that donut in your mouth when it's almost like a drug. And, food is our medicine to where, like, yeah, I see this giant box of cookies on the counter, but I'm not really interested in eating them. In fact, the thought of that just gave me like a mild little headache. Like, oh yeah, I don't want the sugar. I don't want the sugar high and crash and all that. It's not conducive to what it is I'm doing at the moment.
Are you keeping track of your hormones? Are you getting tested and stuff?
Yeah, I've done TRT/HRT for years now. I'm 37, almost 38. 29, 30 or so is when I got on TRT. So, yeah, but I don't do bloods as often as I should, but that's because years ago I'd go back and forth with my endocrinologist to really dial in the dosage. And then once it's dialed in, it's just kind of maintenance mode. Every
Right.
now and then, maybe once every 1 or 2 years, I'll look at my bloods. Surprise, surprise, they're exactly where they need to be. So I don't do it as often as I'd recommend. Now, guys, if you're newer getting into this, do your bloods more frequently because you want to find that Goldilocks zone and that sweet spot. I do recommend you can do a lot of research online, find like a good teledoc or endocrinologist. Make sure you do it under medical attention. In my early 20s, I played baseball down here in Mexico too. So I did do a couple cycles. They were test only cycles, but crazy high, like 5 milligrams a week split into, 250 milligram doses every 3.5 days. That's way too much. I don't need that. Even at the high end of TRT, I can get a lot better results than I would on quote unquote a beginner steroid cycle. And I've found once more as I'm getting older, it's not about adding things, it's about removing things. So I backed off the testosterone. I do HGH every day too for anti-aging. I do the minimal effective dose for that one. HCG, that's if you want to retain fullness with your boys or fertility. I go back and forth with that. With the active dating life, I like to have a lower swimmer count, so I don't put the HCG in the mix. But there is a bit of atrophy, down there. But I've never had a girl once in my life be like, oh, they're not as full as they need to be. They usually just assume like, oh, this guy must hook up with a lot of girls. That's probably why he's not full or have maximum volume there. But I've literally never had that come up. So going back to the TRT thing, I think really educate yourself. I'm all about tracking stuff. So get your bloods, get your labs, do it all at once. Fix your diet too. Dial in your diet. Figure out what your BMR, your basic metabolic rate is. So what your RMR, your resting metabolic rate. I calculate my diet by TDEE, which is your total daily expenditure of energy. Just get all of this information out. Figure out about yourself. I've done gene testing before too. Turns out I was obese as a kid, that I do have genes to where if my triglycerides are over a certain level, it's going to trigger those fat storage type genes. I have like pre-diabetes genes, but you can turn them off. So really just get a solid assessment of before I was talking like emotionally and spiritually, but now actually factually, scientifically, medically, get a true assessment of like how does your body work, and then you start to adjust the system. And for me, I mentioned just a second ago, minimally viable dose. What's the minimal I have to do to get the maximum output? Because I have done extreme dieting before. I've gotten like really super lean, like fitness model lean, but you can maintain it, but you're giving up a lot in life. So I kind of have my sweet spot. I like to be between 10 to 12% body fat. Music festival coming up this weekend. I'll dial it in a bit. I'm not going to land in single digits this time around because, I have an active social life. Things are coming up. But by virtue of walking and dancing for 3 days straight with little sleep, and I rarely eat, I'll come out of the festival absolutely jacked. So not worried about it.
All right, Jaren. So you're clearly dialed on a lot of different areas of your life, what are, let's say three, if you had to pick three daily habits or routines that like have really increased your quality of life, what would they be?
So, three daily habits. I'd say there's some micro habits I do. So every morning when I wake up, I set my alarm every morning, but normally I wake up at the same exact time, regardless how much or how little sleep I get. And there's usually a buffer. I usually have 10 to 20 minutes before I actually need to be out of bed. So in that area between coming out of a dream state, but coming more into the being awakened state, I like that crossover state. Your brain is still kind of between both worlds. So I do what I call an all systems check. Going through your body. Like today, I have a little bit of a lingering headache, but I trained shoulders yesterday, and then I did a bunch of shrugs. And I woke up this morning, and my pillows were kind of misarranged or whatever. So I probably slept in a weird position. Just be mindful of that. Like, okay, I've got a little lingering kind of kink in my neck. If I'm not careful, that could turn into a full-fledged headache today. So let's make sure I'm up on hydration, make sure like I do this daily as best practice, but like really get the electrolytes in, maybe limit the caffeine, maybe limit my time spent close to the computer screen, be a little more relaxed. I'm in my office chair now, but maybe I'm in the recliner. I just kind of keep it nice and easy. Went to the gym today. I'm not going to do anything to aggravate that. And that's just one thing. Maybe my stomach's a bit upset. Well, why is it upset? Well, I had some really spicy food last night from an Indian restaurant in Mexico that I had never been to before. Maybe stomach's a bit upset. Just be mindful of that. Watch that throughout the day. I call it an all systems check. I mentioned I bought an older BMW recently. So whenever those little check engine codes come on, when I didn't know about cars, it's like, oh my God, check engine light. The whole thing's going to blow up. No, I've got one on now. It's a tire sensor. Turns out the car had run flats. And I asked the guy when I bought it, it's like, hey, you took the run flats off, right? It's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Did the full inspection with the dealership. Just have to reset that code. Doesn't have run flats on it anymore. My check engine light comes on. I'm aware of that. Kind of the same thing with your body. How you feeling physically, how you feeling spiritually, how you feeling emotionally. I used to actually have to track it out, but now I've done it so many years that when I wake up, my brain's just offering this information up to me. And part of that, I like doing a gratitude thing too. It's like, oh my God, I'm so grateful to be alive. Like it just feels really good. Up, the birds are outside chirping, or it's been cloudy here the last couple of days. So, okay, it's a little colder than I'd like. The car I bought is a convertible, so I wanted to cruise around the top down today. Not going to happen. It's been kind of drippy and raining, but okay, well, how do we reframe that into gratitude? Because you'll hear people here, oh, it's been rain. It's not rainy season yet here in Mexico, but so oh, it's been raining the last few days. This sucks. I want the sun to come out. Like I like it when it rains because it knocks all the pollution out of the air and it smells really fresh and crisp. And traffic's a bear, so I don't like that. So I'm not going to focus on that. But I like the mist in the air. And then after it rains, there's these beautiful purple flowers called bugambilias and jacarandas that start blooming all over the city. So it's really just taking, okay, I'm waking up, I'm coming into my physical or my reality state. What's going on around me? What's going on internally? How do I spin it into a positive and make the most of it? And then there's two things: gratitude, all systems check, and then I visualize my day. The night before I go to bed, I look at my calendar, but in the morning, I visualize myself going through it. I do have a naturally ADHD brain, so in the past it used to be overwhelming. It would start to throw in front of me all the possible things that could go wrong, and I'd allow it to go down those rabbit holes, and then I'd get disjointed and just kind of lost in a flurry of thoughts. Now I have that more dialed in to where, okay, well, what does the day look like? I've got my systems and structures built into my life. As I mentioned, when girls come over, like this is what we're doing at this time. If it's Monday through Friday, every day looks exactly the same. This is what we're doing, and dials in or reels in those deviation points mentally to where, okay, I'm just like got my calendar up right here. I'm just looking at it. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's things that could go wrong. Here's things I need to take into consideration. You kind of mentally map that out, and then when I get out of bed, it's just pure execution at that point. And it makes life easier. I don't really have to think about it. And then as the sun goes down, that's when I play guitar for an hour. That's me kind of getting the more spiritual me. Before I go to bed, I do the reverse of that. It's like, okay, what are the lessons learned from today? What happened today? What are the things I got done that I can check off my to-do list? What are things that came up that I need to get done? And you just kind of restructure everything, recalibrate it, go to bed, get your solid 6, 7, 8, whatever you need. And then in the morning, repeat the cycle.
What does your dream life look like? And what, if anything, is missing from it today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because going back and talking about different chapters or different iterations of myself, I'm actually living my dream life right now. But it's my dream life as I defined years ago. So once more, as I'm leaning into more things that are suddenly calling my interest, I think those details will become more clear. For me, there's been recurring themes in my dream life. Fit, financially free, just free in general. I'm still very free, but I suppose having a larger degree of freedom to where if I want to go work in Europe for the summer, I can, but I still have to plan it. If I want to go to Europe tomorrow for the next 3 months, probably can't do it. There'd be some considerations. So I'd have to set up new systems and structures to get to the point to where having the option of being able to do so. And that's in every area of my life. I mentioned earlier that in my dating life, once you get to that point to where you feel like you're playing it on master mode, like I can have anything I want. Anything I want in my dating life, I can achieve it with relatively little effort. So I suppose it would be applying that mindset and having the ability to do so in all other areas of my life. Fitness wise, I can get sloppy on the diet, but as long as I dial it in, I snap right back almost immediately. Finance wise, that's probably the bigger area. And again, I'm definitely not lacking. I live very well for myself, but it's getting to that next level. So I'm coming into my late 30s. I think the ability to be able to just buy a business, and I'm hanging out. A lot of our clients are higher net worth, so I'm hanging out with guys that are clients of mine in my company. We were going out to dinners and then just like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy a business for X amount of millions of dollars. Or we have guys that are 6, 7, 8 figure earners. I'm like, okay, well, not that I want to do that. I don't necessarily want to be a CEO. I don't want to manage like giant global businesses. But if I can figure out using my core strengths and knowing myself well enough, how can I put together a system that will allow me the option to do that? I think for me, that would be quote unquote the dream life. But dream life, I'm already living my dream life. I'm free. I can do anything I want whenever I want. So I suppose it's just blowing it up or scaling it to that next level.
Yeah, I feel like there's almost always a part of my dream life is that I'm always striving for something beyond. So it's
Yeah.
almost like there has to be that next level always.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had to stop the other day. I always think, what are my old man activities or what do I want my golden years to look like? There's members of my family even where they live well over 100 years and they're very, very old and very happy and still together. And they've built large financial estates and large families. And they're just, I hang out with them, just life well lived. Like we're any day now, like I've got grandparents like that, 102 and 100 years old. Like any day now, we're going to kick over. It's like, okay, you've been saying that for 20 years, but the older they get, the happier they are. And then my grandpa last time I saw him was like, look at this, big sprawling commercial agriculture estate and giant family and grandkids and great grandkids. And I think he's got some great great grandkids coming along the way. It's like, okay, so I'm already kind of living that, but what's the next level of that? And I think one thing I think I need to work on too is being happy in the moment. I've gotten better at that over the years, but I'm always forward thinking and future thinking to where as I'm going through the day-to-day motions, I'm living in a parallel fashion in my head of like, okay, well, what will what I'm doing now look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or I have things visualized out until I'm 50 or so, which I think visualization is important because the more you hold that identity firmly in your head, you eventually just step into it. And one day you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, here I am. Like, oh, not fat anymore. Like, oh, not poor anymore. Oh, not, I can get laid. I can get a girlfriend. What now? What do I want to do now?
All right, Jaren Scott. Thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, wow. That went by fairly quick.
It's good. Is there anywhere people can, keep up with you?
Yeah, if you want to follow me, personally, I don't do too much social media anymore, which if you come on board for dating, I do handle the digital aspect. So again, I'm a systems and structures guy. You'll see I don't post a lot. I don't do a lot of Instagram, but I do use Instagram as a messenger. I've got the tab open and I live abroad too, so a lot of people coming in there. So Instagram at Jaren Scott, JarenScott, all together at Jaren Scott. And I'm sure you'll probably throw a link in
Yeah,
the description or
I should have
whatever
that there.
here. That's my personal Instagram. Feel free to reach out to me anything at all. I'm not a one-trick pony. I do have the dating business, but we can talk fitness and finances. I actually learned Spanish very quickly and speak it at a very high level. So there's systems and structures and hacks. There's conversion tables that I created between Spanish and English that gives you about half the language in 2 weeks if you want to venture down those avenues. So I've got a big bag of tricks, so to speak. But most people know me from the dating stuff. It's a company I have with my buddy Joel. We brought on a local guy, Emiliano, who we call him our resident Mexican. Like it's never bad to have locals actually in your company, especially if you're working in a local market. So if you've ever thought about, hey, you know what, I like Latinos, or I'd like to go abroad, or I want more feminine and fun and fit and attractive women that appreciate me for who I am. Mexico is definitely a good place to go for that. Mexico City is one of the top 10 cities, I believe, any survey or rank that I look at to live in the world right now. It is a world-class city. It's a major cosmopolitan city. There's everything here. So it's close to the US. So if you're interested in maybe a Mexpat type lifestyle or just dating Latinas, or if you just want to get better with dating at home, it's a transferable skill set. I got really good at dating in California and then got even better in Mexico. And then even when I go to hard mode countries like Eastern Europe, I still get the same exact results I do in Mexico. Once you have the skill set dialed in, doesn't really matter where in the world you're at, you just kind of got it down. So, if any of those things interest you, once more, Instagram at Jaren Scott. Mexpat Dating is what you want to look for. I have a YouTube channel also with my socios or my partners here, business partners. So feel free to look up Mexpat Dating as well, and I'm here to serve. So whatever you need, let me know. And then if anything else comes up that I didn't mention, just drop a line and let's get a conversation going.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, likewise. Definitely appreciate it. And cheers to your audience.
Sweet.
See y'all around.
Bye, everybody.